Hello everyone, welcome back. So in the last video we discussed about how to install Java, at the same time how to install Python, and not only that, we know how to run a simple hello world program in Python as well as Java. Now, so before we are jumping into actual programming, there are certain things which we need to know. If you're learning Java, you need to know this, or if you learn Python, of course you need to know this basic set of rules and regulations. Okay, that is what we're gonna discuss here. Okay, so whatever I'm gonna discuss here, we're gonna talk about in a detailed manner in the upcoming videos, but here I'm just gonna give you a heads up. So when we talk about Java, the first thing which comes to in our mind, object. So what is an object? Object is a core for a programming language. So what object is contains? Object specifically contains, it's a kind of a holder. It contains some state and behaviors. For example, I'm a human. I have a state and I have some behaviors. So what do you mean by state and behaviors? I'm living still and I'm still breathing. That is my state. I'm not dead yet. And what is my behaviors? I can talk, I can walk, I can run. So these are all my behaviors. So similarly, each and every real entity things are called as an object. For example, take a car. Car has its brand and its model. Those are all states. And what are the behaviors of the car? We can accelerate or we can apply brake. There are a lot of behaviors, right? So if somebody is asking what is object in Java, it's just a simple answer. It's nothing but it's a state and behavior. That's all. The next thing. So class. Okay, so without a class, object is not object is meaningless, correct? So what exactly is a class? Class is nothing but it's a template, or you can simply call them, class is exactly a blueprint of the things. So if you're creating a class, you have to write some business logic in it. So you'll have some methods in it, you'll have some implementation in it. So the class is a blueprint, and the object is meaningless if you don't have a class. So class is a blueprint, or you can say as a template also. And methods. So if you're writing a class, the purpose of creating a class, you're going to write some functionality in it. So if you want to write some functionality, you need to have a function in it. So functions or methods, both are same. So what is the purpose for a method? So it is going to be containing the business logic, or you can simply say the implementation, your logic implementation. And next important thing, the variables. So variables is a unique thing. So they are holding the data, the real data. So why do we write a program? I have some data, I want to process them. So in order to process them, I need to have a data with me. So that is the place the variable comes into place. So variable name is nothing but holding a data in a specific memory location. So if you're creating int x is equal to 10, which means I'm creating an integer in my memory, there is a place occupied for that particular integer. So as a basic thing, you need to know what is an object and what is a class and what is method and what is variable. Don't worry about that. We're going to talk about each and every point in a detailed manner, right? Okay, so I know these are the important things you need to know. Next thing, the basic syntax. So far we are just talking about only the Java. So when it comes to basic syntax, Java is case sensitive. So what do you mean by case sensitive? So X is a different name and capital X is a different name. Java is a different name and writing the same with some changed character, like Java. This is different and this is entirely different. So case sensitive means even if one character changed or one character uppercase or lowercase, still it's considered as a different variable or different data. That is the first thing. The next thing, class name. So why do we need a class name? Why do you need address? So if somebody wants to contact you, they need your address. The similar way, if you want to access some functionality, that particular functionality implemented in a method and it is placed under some class. So the class must have a name for it. That class name can be anything, but it has its certain standards. So if you're creating a class, we need to know how we can create a class. So I can create a class name called hello world, which is better. I can create a class name called like hello world in this way also, and I can create something like hello world. So everything is right, but what is the standard? So if you want to follow the standard, when it is a class name, the class name starts with capital letter and the following the next word comes with capital letter, right? So what happens if it is a method? It is exactly quite opposite to class name. So class name starts with small letter and method name starts with small letter. For example, method name, this is my method name. So it is starts with small letter and the next word, upcoming words will start with a capital letter. For example, say hi. This is an example. And it doesn't mean say hi, this is wrong. You can still create a method like this, but it is not standard. So if you are a Java developer, make sure you are following the proper standard. And next important thing, the file name. So you created a class called hello world. How are you going to save it? You can save anything like that, any names? No, it's not. There are certain rules. If you want to save a particular class file, you need to save the file as a class name.java. In our case, if it is a hello world, which means it is going to be hello world.java. Or if you're creating xyz, the file has to be saved as a xyz.java. Because the reason, every class contains some different methods. For example, in a single file you have a multiple classes. Okay, the reason why we are saving in a particular file, that particular class is executable. Even though if you have a 5 classes in the same file, the only executable class is the name which you saved. Okay, and the next important thing, we know about a case sensitive and the class name and method. Also we know how to name a file, right? And next important thing, the entry point. So entry point for Java is main method. So the main method is nothing but, when we have seen in the hello world program, right, something called public static void main and string and args. So this is the entry point, correct? Okay, so what is the reason behind each and everything? Let me split each and everything in a separate way. So what is the public means? You can access from everywhere because you have a public access. And why it is a static? So what do you mean by public? Because your Java is installed in some different location and you're executing your file from different location, and when your JDK is trying to execute a Java file, the method needs to be public, or else it won't be accessible by JDK or your Java virtual machine. And then why is a static? Why it has to be static? There is a reason behind static. If it is a static, it can be accessed by class, which is pretty cool. Okay, and you might wonder, when we write a hello world program, we haven't created any object, but still how the main method will be executed? Because main method is static method. So the moment when you execute the hello world method, you know how it will execute? Hello world dot main. I can access the main method using the class name because it's a static. So that is the advantage of static. And the static members, which means static variables and static methods, they all belongs to a class. They are all belongs to a class. They are not belongs to an object. Just keep that in mind. And void. So why I need to have a void here as a return type? Because the method can be executed from anywhere and we don't need to return anything to them. So void means it's empty, no return, nothing, or empty. or not written anything. Because if you write some program like you're giving some username and password and you want to know the outcome of it, so you will return success or failure. But since it's a entry point, whoever is calling this particular executor method, they will not expect anything from this particular method. They all wanted to be execute the method, and internally inside this method they will call some other methods. That's done. And next important thing, the main. So why is main here? It is nothing but main is just a method name. See, the method name starts with a small letter, so it's just a method name. You might think the method name can be anything. From Java perspective, method name can be anything, but the executor method means it is a main method. So if you have a main method in your class, then only your compiler try identify, okay, this is a class and it has a main method, so I can execute the class. So without main method, you cannot execute a class. Okay, so why it is accepting a string of arguments? For example, if somebody is calling your main method, okay, they might pass some any type of data. They might call integer, they might call a double, they might call decimal. Okay, but if it's any specific data, it cannot be converted into some different kind of a data. But if it is a string, you can convert a string into an integer or into a decimal or into a float or into a long or any kind of data. So the type conversion is more comfortable when it has a string arguments. So for type safety or typecasting, thing based on input. Okay, so we know some things. Then the naming. So because you might ask, okay, the naming we already discussed, right? So the class name starts with capital, the method name starts with small, and the similar way the variable also starts with small. Methods and variables, they are pretty much method and variables. They both follow the same standard, right? Now how it can be done, so how we can create the names, or is there any restrictions over there? That is what we're going to talk about. So naming means you can simply call them as a identifier. Identifier is nothing means identifiers. My name is Arun, so I'm a human, but Arun is my identification. You are a human and your name is your identification. So name is an identification. So how or what are the characters are allowed? So between A to Z, it's allowed. Capital A Z to capital Z, the same time capital A to small a to small z, and also 0 to 9, and there are some additional special characters are allowed to use, dollar, and you can use underscore as well. Okay, so for example, you cannot create a name start by number because that is invalid. I'll give you a simple example. You are saving your mom's number. For example, your mom has 2 SIM cards. So you will always save mom 1, mom, or mom 2. That is how by default normal nature will be. We will never say like 1 mom, 2 mom. We won't do that. So even you can take the normal scenario as an example. So the identifier means what are the characters we can use to create an identifier, which means the variable name or the class name on the method names. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about the same in Python. So what are the must known things we should know about Python? Hello everyone, now let's talk about the must known things about Python, because we discussed about Java, so now we should know about Python as well, right? So that's the plan. So let me copy this, Control-C, and I'm gonna paste it here. So the must known things about Python. So Python is comparatively easy. So we don't have a certain standards like Java, like creating a class. Just to execute a hello world, you need to create a class, you need to create a method. There is no such rules in Python. It is simple in Python. If you want to create a variable, you can still do that. And again, in Python also we have object, class, methods, variables, everything. And when it comes to object and class, it has a different behaviors and access modifiers and how we can access a class. There are a lot of things which we need to know. Okay, and let's talk about let me open the terminal in the first place so I can show you how Python is easier to execute a simple hello world. So I just open Python console. Let me just type something, hello world. See how easy is that. But if you want to do the same thing in Java, you have to create a class and it contains a main method and it's supposed to have a system.out.println to print the data, right? But here it is simple and I can create a variables just like that, x is equal to 10, and you can print the x. Okay, and you must know, okay, in Java we have a certain standards to creating the names, right? And Python as well, it is pretty much the same. So let's talk about the first thing, the case sensitive. Let's talk about the object class method when you go for the object oriented programming stuff. We'll talk about everything together because Java, without knowing the object class, you cannot even enter into Java, but Python is not like that. So first thing, case sensitive. Just like Java, Python is also sensitive, case sensitive. X is different, capital X is different, and Python is different, and this is different. So each and everything is a different names. So even though they are all belong to the same meaning, they are different names, considering as a different names because they are case sensitive. It is a small x, it's a capital X, and it's Python. It's also Python, but this Python starts with the capital letter, which is this one is not. Okay, and then just like Python, we don't have any entry points. You can directly create a Python file and you can execute them. And from the naming standards. So what I'm gonna do is, or naming, or you can my identifiers. Just like Java, you can use create a variable name using A to Z and A to Z. Again 0 to 9. Both of them are programming language, right? So they pretty much have the same things, and there are certain things not to use because in Java, as I mentioned, there are certain characters which you can, special symbols we can use, dollar and the underscore symbol. The similar way, Python, there are certain symbols which you cannot use it, like at symbol you cannot use it for create identifier, and dollar symbol and the mod symbol. So these three symbols you cannot use it to create a variable or any names, whether it is a class name or a method name or anything. You cannot use it. Okay, so how we can save the file name? It can be your choice. So like Java, there is no certain rules like you have to save the class as a hello world.py. You can save by any name, or you can simply save like my first program.py, or you can say hello world.py. So the naming is not a big concern here. Okay, and there are some additional things you might notice in somewhere where you're looking at the Python codes. They create a variable like x is equal to 10, okay, which is good, but the colon is not necessary in Python like Java. So here x is equal to 10, and there are certain times you might see something like underscore x. So what do you mean by underscore x? Underscore x is indicates that that particular is a private. Or there are times you might see like double underscore is equal to 20, which means this is a strong private. So these are all comes under access modifiers. Java has access modifiers and Python also has access modifiers. We'll talk about both of them together in the upcoming videos. And so what are the other things which you need to know? So for example, you want to comment something line, some particular line of a code. Okay, so hello world. So you want to comment this, just this particular line. So what do you need to do? If it is Java, you can provide / here, right? But if it is Java, you need to use the # symbol. Okay, so you might think, so for example, I have a multiple lines. Hello, welcome to Python programming. So I want to comment all these lines. So the easiest way, you can use the triple colon. So how you're using the triple colon to create a string, you can use them to comment as well. So if you do this, this particular piece of code will be not considering as a executable part. And most important thing, so this is common for Java and Python. So Java and Python. So what do you mean by that? So you might have seen something like this open and close brackets. So which means class starts and ends. So if you see this open and close curly braces in a class, which means this is start and this is the end. But if you see the same in methods, okay, that belongs to method start and end. So this is the block of code. I can show you that. So let me create a simple hello world here, class hello world. I'm just providing in Java. So here let's take here as a main method. I'm just simply creating, it's not a proper standard. So this is nothing but start of class, and this is end of class, because this open and close curly braces belongs to this particular class because it is started once we create a class. But here there is a method, and again there is a open and close parenthesis, which means it's method starts and method ends. So just careful about that. So this we need to be placed it in under the Java. Okay. Okay, so now the next thing, how it can be done in Python. So like Java, in Python there is no such thing like open and curly braces. Okay, so how it can be done in Python, for example, you have a if condition, like, or you have a method. So def, or let me create a main method here, main. So this is my method name. Let's consider this a method name, and you need to provide the colon here. So the moment when you enter, it will automatically indent some space. I think it's 1 tab or 5 indent spaces. So here you will provide print, and you will provide some statements here. So like x, y, z, and you will create something like again print and ABC. So which means this particular lines or belongs to the main method, because I just provided the colon here, which means whatever comes under this particular line, this particular intended space, all belongs to this method. Okay, so something like this. So print hi. Is this belongs to this method? No, it is not, because the intended space started finished here. So I started from the beginning here, which means it's a new piece of code, next line of a code. Okay, so that is how it will work. Okay, so in Java it's open and curly braces, and in Python it's just the colon. So I can provide it here. Just intended space. Yeah, you can keep this. So this is how in Python and Java they are common in certain scenarios, right? So in the next video we are going to talk about the first step into the programming, which means we are going to talk about the actual concept. So let's do some research on the data types. So once you know what kind of data types are available, then you can use the data types to create a variables. And in the variables, we have a lot of things to discuss. What are the different types of variable and how to create them, and what is the impact if you're creating different kind of variables. We will talk about that in the next video. Thank you.